Hey everyone, welcome. Just gonna let people in. Okay. Give people 2 more minutes. I am Jessie Mahoney. I'm a pediatrician and a mindful coach, and I'm gonna share some tips on mindfulness and relationships. And what love will do is what Tracy asked me to chat about today also. So it should be fun. And if any of you are willing to get coaching, I would love to do some coaching. She warned me that it might be quiet, but it's my favorite thing. And I promise I'm really kind and nurturing. So if any of you are interested, I think you'll love it. Let me just keep letting folks in. And if you want to turn your video on, you're welcome to do that too. It makes it more fun, but you don't have to. Hi, Noelle. Nice to see you. All right. People are still joining, so I'm going to just pay attention to the waiting room for another minute, and then we'll get started. If anybody is interested in getting coached on mindfulness or relationships or anything like that, go ahead and just put a note in the chat box so then I can see it, and then I'll know, and that will also help me figure out timing of how much to talk and versus not. All right. I'll give it till 4:32 because that's usually I give people 2 minutes to log on, and then we'll get started. Or I'm in California, so it's 4:30 here. I know you guys are all over the country. All right. Well, I will get started and keep my eye on the waiting room too. So I may pause for a moment here or there as I let people in. And if any of you would love to turn your video on, I would love that. It makes it more fun for me if I can see people rather than black boxes. And I am very informal, so I love it if people unmute themselves and ask questions. And if people want to do some live coaching, I would love to do that too. So by way of introduction, I am a board certified pediatrician. I work in San Francisco, and I was a physician wellness leader for most of my 18 years in medicine. I worked at Kaiser Permanente or the Permanente Medical Group, depending on where you are. You may or may not know that. I actually transitioned about a year ago. I resigned from my job of almost 20 years to be a coach full-time and to teach yoga, which I have loved. I am in being in physician wellness, and I will explain a little bit more about my background and all of that. I found coaching and mindfulness to be the thing that really changed things for physicians. And so I felt like as a pediatrician, my big focus was relationships and sort of the ripple effects of this work on the next generation. And I felt that working with parents and working with people on their relationships and working with physicians, the impact that I could have and that ripple effect through the effect on patients and families and children was huge. And that was really where my talents and passion lay. And so I resigned not knowing that COVID was coming at all. And so it was an interesting year. I'll just leave it at that. So what I like to do is blend mindfulness and coaching. And the reason that I like to bring the mindfulness piece in is mindfulness revs up your parasympathetic nervous system. So it's your calm, restore. We used to call it rest and digest. But if you think about it, it's the part of your nervous system that relaxes. And as physicians, our sympathetic nervous system is just like gone crazy. And when we have that, we have kind of that snow globe effect in our brain, and we have a hard time making decisions, and we have a hard time kind of connecting with our hearts and how we feel. And so mindfulness essentially calms your brain down. It calms that snow globe down. And when you do that, you can take in coaching much more efficiently, and your brain can undergo that neuroplasticity it needs to change some of your thought patterns. And it's really a powerful tool to help yourself make shifts more quickly and also more easily, is what I like to say. So it's not like banging your head against a wall or forcing change. It's basically making yourself really receptive to change and opening up that kind of creative outlet where your brain can be curious and think about things. And so that's why the mindfulness makes such a difference. It's also about compassion. And one of the things I'm going to talk a little bit about today is when we are not compassionate or kind or accepting of ourselves, it actually shuts down parts of your nervous system, and it releases norepinephrine and cortisol. So the feelings of shame and guilt do that, and blame. And so we can't learn and we can't make changes under those conditions. You're really in your sympathetic fight or flight state, and we don't learn and grow from that. And so part of mindfulness is noticing and being aware, and non-judgment is another key piece of it. And so judging ourselves is a very bad habit of women physicians in particular. And so mindfulness helps you soften that, not to say that you won't do it, but to basically loosen your grip on that old habit and soften it and lessen it. And so I work with a lot of people on essentially quieting the being mean to yourself and moving into sort of acceptance and kindness. So, and once you've done that, then you can choose an intentional response. And so my coaching business is actually called Pause and Presence. And the idea is that in that pause, that's where all your power and all your attention and all the change can come, but you actually have to pause first. So mindfulness helps you pause. And so many of us as physicians don't ever pause. We just keep going. And so you have to pause and then sit in that pause and be present. Notice what's going on, feel the feelings that you have, and make an intentional decision about how you want to move forward. So that's sort of the background of how I come at it. I'm also a trained yoga teacher. And just for all of you to know, I teach yoga to mostly physicians every weekend, and it's free. And any of you who would like to join are welcome to join. It started as part of the Mindful Healthcare Collective, but you can find out more about it on my webpage. There's a yoga tab and it gives you the link to join. So it's Jessie Mahoney, MD. .com. And I love having people. You don't have to be a yoga fanatic to do it. The idea is actually to learn to be mindful and pause, and to incorporate a lot of the self-compassion and acceptance and healing and nourishing yourself. So it's a really cool experience. I'm also teaching for something called the Mindfulness and Healthcare Summit that's coming up, which is also free. It's a great opportunity to hear from a lot of people who are doing work in mindfulness and healthcare. It's May 20th to 23rd, but you can register online. If you type in Mindfulness and Healthcare Summit, it comes up. It's being sponsored by mindful.org. So it's a pretty cool thing. And I'm teaching 2 yoga classes there. So you can also join those for free. And then the other thing that I just want to offer today, because I'm talking about mindfulness and relationships, is that I also co-host a podcast called the Mindful Healers Podcast. And for this month, we've been focusing on relationships. And so the week before last, the relationship was on what love would do. And that's what Tracy asked me to talk about today. This week's podcast episode is on a Mother's Day gift, and it's essentially about how we approach Mother's Day and all of the old thought patterns that can get in the way of making either Mother's Day or any holiday, birthday, Valentine's Day, a problem. And so working through thought patterns around that. And then coming up on Mother's Day is your relationship with your mother, which is a hot button issue for a lot of people. And I do a lot of coaching around that. And then the following week is about being a mom. And so how to sort of use mindfulness, and it is an approach to that, and to up-level your relationships so they feel better, really, and function better. And so that's called the Mindful Healers Podcast. You can just Google it and find it. That's definitely the easiest way to do it. And the reason I like to focus on relationships is, as a doctor, we know that relationships, unhealthy relationships, are you have higher mortality and less longevity and more health problems. And if you haven't read the book Together by Vivek Murthy, I suggest you read it. He's the former Surgeon General, and he talks a lot about loneliness and unhealthy relationships. But the gist of it is that when you have unhealthy relationships and you're disconnected, that it actually very much negatively impacts your health and wellness. And so as physicians, many of us have these relationships, but we haven't put the time or the energy into them, and we don't know how. And our very smart physician brains tend to get us into a lot more trouble than others in relationships. And so I just offer that because we're constantly second guessing and trying to massage things to work in ways that we think they should. And we are trained to control and manage and fix things. And that's not usually the best approach to relationships. And so in my experience, we tend to have potentially even more trouble with relationships. And I say that with compassion. And I'll talk a little bit about my own personal experience and how I got into it, because you'll see that I learned that a bit the hard way. And then as a pediatrician, I just see that relationships are so impactful on the parents, on the children, on the grandparents, on the next generation, on our children's children. And so doing this work up front, bringing a mindful approach to relationships, can change all generations. And that's really, really powerful. And then as a coach, what I've discovered is that coaching can really change relationships. And so working on our mindset and being the change we want to be, as we say in coaching. So it takes one person to change a relationship from the coaching perspective. And from that perspective, it means that we can make things better and fix things without fixing other people. And that's so powerful. And so I encourage all of you to think about that within your relationships. And I came to coaching 5-ish years ago when I was the chief of my department, and I had just opened up a new pediatric clinic, and I had 3 teenagers and a husband of like 25 years at that time, actually probably less. We're getting 28 years this year, so however long it was. But he actually had developed some pretty significant depression over a couple of years. And that was sort of the thing that pushed me over the edge with all of everything else. And so I found a coach for me because I didn't really know what else to do. I tried fixing and controlling and managing everyone, and that didn't work at all. And I tried to, protect my children and micromanage everything, and none of that worked for me. And so I hired a coach, not a physician coach, because they didn't exist at the time, but my coach's husband was a doctor. So that made me feel somewhat safe. And then I also went back to yoga. And by the time I was done coaching, I had already done yoga teacher training because I found the yoga piece and the mindfulness piece of yoga so helpful. And then as soon as I finished my coaching myself, I signed up to become a coach, because what was clear to me as a physician wellness leader is that these are the tools that can change our experience of medicine. Not that medicine doesn't need to change, but that we need to take care of ourselves first, and then we can be part of the solution and advocate for ourselves in a more effective way than coming from this sort of victimhood state, which is not a very powerful state. And I am also a huge conflict avoider. And so all these years in physician wellness, I felt frustrated, sort of pushing boulders up a wall or up a hill. And what I found with coaching is it was a solution that kind of helps you go around and find relief and feel better in the moment. And so why wouldn't you want to do that? So that's how I got into it. And I like to always start my sessions with a bit of mindfulness, because they sort of open up your mind to learning in and of itself. And maybe some of you might want to coach after you feel more relaxed. And if not, I'm going to share some of my relationship tips, and they always come up in the coaching, but I'm also happy to share them. I did a session. I went to Dartmouth myself, and they asked me to speak. They have some Women Thrive series. And so I gave a talk for them that I shared sort of my 10 best tips. So I have all those for you if nobody wants to get coached, because Tracy warned me that you may or may not, but I'm hoping I'm creating a safe enough space that maybe someone will. And so I like to start though with some mindfulness, and all that's required is to find, as I say, a comfortable seat in your chair. Everyone I can see is sitting. If you're driving, opt out, because I don't want anyone closing their eyes and doing anything dangerous. If you're standing or walking, you can just stop and ground your feet into the earth, but otherwise take those sit bones, which are just really the bones that you feel hit the chair, and tilt your pelvis forward so that your sit bones ground down into the earth beneath you. And then grow your spine with intention straight up, stack vertebrae by vertebrae, and reach the crown of your head up towards the sky and drop your shoulders. And if you're comfy with it, close your eyes to help you tap into yourself, and rest your hands lightly on your thighs. And take a moment to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. And another long, smooth inhale. And an exhale. One more in through your nose and out through your mouth. And take your left hand and place it atop your heart space. Take the heel of your hand and just press it gently into that heart space. And take your right hand and place it gently atop the left on the back side, and just sort of rub it there and then press in gently. When you press in, it actually releases a bit of oxytocin, the feel-good hormone, and you'll probably feel a little better. And then take a long, sweet inhale again through your nose. And an exhale. Notice how you feel right here, right now, hand to heart, focusing on your breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And see if you can even the inhale, the length of the inhale, and the length of the exhale. And take a moment to connect with your heart space underneath your hand. And just notice how your heart feels. Can you listen to it and hear if it has anything to say? You may not have listened to it in a long time and it may be silent, but just notice. And then think about one thing about yourself that you would not change. One thing that you feel good about, that you're proud of, that you enjoy about yourself. And as you think of that thing, let it circulate through you with the breath and the blood flow, all to all the nooks and crannies of your body as you sit here. And then draw your attention to, there's a space behind your heart that fills in diastole as the heart expands. And notice if it feels tight or stuck. Very often does. And as you breathe in, breathe the breath into that spot behind the heart, just to loosen it, unstick it. Breathe out. And breathe in compassion and support and love into that spot behind your heart. And let it out. Notice if your heart can fill a little more easily. Realizing that a full heart in diastole sends more nourishment, healing, love, and support to the rest of your body. And remembering from physiology that your heart nourishes itself first. So giving it this space to fill and a pause to rest and restore. Feed your own heart, which then feeds the rest of you. And when you take a moment such as this to feed your own self, you're much better able to give to everyone else when you return back to reality. Taking a long and deep inhale through your nose. And a big, long, smooth exhale once again. And bring your hands back to your lap, palms open, in just a receptive position, and notice how you feel. Perhaps some tingles in different parts of your body, your fingers and your toes. Perhaps your chest feels a little looser, a little less tense. Perhaps your mind is a little more calm, with a little less chatter. Perhaps that lump in your throat or in your upper chest has loosened a bit. When you're ready, open your eyes and we'll come back into our lovely Zoom room, such as it is. And so what I'll do, does anybody, no one's put in the chat box, does anybody want to get coached? If you do, just put a note in the chat box. And if not, I'm going to start by sharing a few tips. Oh, Carmen, excellent. Let me unmute you and we'll do that. Oh, beautiful. Wonderful.
Hi.
So tell me what you'd like to get coached on.
So one of the things one of my goals with coaching is to lose weight. But I find that it's very difficult, I guess, to get out of kind of the diet mentality and like if I'm trying to lose weight, that I'm restricting myself. And so I was on vacation last week and I just didn't want to, I was with friends and I just kind of reverted to the old thing where I didn't really worry about what I ate or drank. And then when I got back and I had gained a few pounds. And so in my mind, I'm thinking like, oh, you did it again. And I was like ashamed or disappointed in myself, and which actually made me less likely to even start up what I was doing with a little bit of success before that, because I was feeling bad about myself. And so I end up being even further from my goal. But in my mind, when I think about like, well, that isn't working for me, but in my mind, I think like that's how I get things done, or that's how I've been able to be successful before. I think the opposite of that I would just be lazy and unmotivated. Like, it's just kind of, I don't know, it's hard for me to like change my thoughts.
Yeah. Well, so first of all, this concept of shame releasing cortisol, if you think about it, cortisol just makes you gain weight. So like physiologically, I find that like really helpful. So be nice to yourself, because we all want to release less cortisol and tap out our adrenals less, and that's healthier. I find a lot of people struggle with this idea of responsibility. And if I let go of being responsible or being ever vigilant or being hard on myself, that something bad will happen. But my guess is, since you've gotten this far, that you're pretty reliable and responsible human being. It's just that you don't know how to be kind to yourself because you haven't ever done that, would be my guess. Is that true?
Yes.
I mean, and I say that with total compassion, right? We were also taught not to be kind to ourselves as physicians, right? We were taught that like push harder, stay up longer, compete with the next person. But what if now is the time that, so I find in terms of weight loss, like when we start to come at it from a place of being kind to ourselves and without shame, then is when you actually start to lose the weight. And so what if your job, rather than to go just say, oh, I'm just going to be nice to myself, just not be mean to yourself. Could you notice how often you're being mean to yourself?
I mean, yeah, I could try to focus on that, on the negative thoughts that come in, you know?
Yeah. Well, and what if you just like notice them without judgment? Oh, look, there I go again. Another negative thought. That's an old habit. That's an old habit. I would recommend actually, because around weight loss and some of these old thoughts, they're like a dried up road with a dirt road in the rain, and they have all the cracks, like they're deep ruts and they're really hard to get out of. So have compassion for yourself around that it's going to be hard to get out of that, but that mindfulness can make it easier. And I'm about practical mindfulness. So some people, say you have to meditate 45 minutes a day to get the benefit. Yeah, more is better, but low activation energy, 5 minutes a day. And if it's headspace, calm, I don't care what it is, go to yoga. Once you've practiced it, you can literally just sit somewhere and breathe and watch the rain for 5 minutes. And that helps your nervous system shift, but that will help these new thoughts pop in. The other thought I have from the mindfulness perspective there is how interesting. Can you just say that to yourself rather than like, of course I screwed up again, that's what I always do. But how interesting that happens, because that's like a more compassionate, nudge it loose type of a thought. And then what if a good friend had the same thing happen? She was working on her weight and she went on a trip and she ate with her friends and came back and didn't do a great job. What would you tell her?
I tell her that's okay. Like, you can just start again. Like, it's not a big deal. It's over with. Like,
And what if she said, well, if I let up on myself, I'm going to be lazy and it's all going to go to pots. What would you tell her?
That's not true.
Yeah. Or like, do you have kids? I think I heard kids in the background. Yeah. But if they sounded littler, but if they're older kids, what would you tell them? Like, or even a child who's learning how to walk, right? They fall down. What do you tell them?
That's okay. Like,
Yeah.
more, like try again. You're gonna, you're getting better. Look at that. Oh, that's great that you're trying.
Yeah. So could you offer yourself something similar?
Yeah, I try to think of that because I think that I am a good friend to others and like caring when they need it, but I don't act the same to myself, I think.
Yeah, I'm just going to grab something because it's going to be easier. I really recommend this book called Good Morning, I Love You. And that's where I stole the hand heart from. And it'll then be in the recording, so I don't have to spell out the author's name or anything. And it's about mindfulness and self-compassion, but it's a lot softer than Kristen Neff's approach. And so she, in the last chapter, talks about the hand to heart and her work on, she's a PhD from Stanford, and her work on shame is what I quote when I talk about the norepinephrine and cortisol. So chapter 5 is on shame and chapter 11 is the hand to heart. And so you can read the rest of the book too, but at least read those 2 chapters, and you don't have to read it in order. But it's really sort of getting at how we treat ourselves and the ramifications of that. And so I think that may help you shift into just maybe deciding you're just not going to be mean to yourself for a week and realizing that you're going to mess up because it's such a deeply rooted habit. It's kind of like smoking. So you're just like, okay, well, I noticed I'm doing it again. I'm going to keep working at it. I'm going to keep working at it. Because what I find we're just scared to get rid of that beating ourselves up habit because we don't know who we'd be without it.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think that it's very ingrained in me, and yeah, like all these things that I need to do this because I have to, and then if I'm not doing it, I'm not, living my life fully.
Yeah.
So there's always this like guilt that I'm like beating myself up about.
So guilt, shame, and blame, all in the same category and if you think about how you act from that place, it usually doesn't get you what you want. I don't know if Tracy's taught you guys the model, but it leads to actions and results that are not what you want. Mm-hmm. And so realizing instead, so choosing an emotion that maybe feels that's accessible. So maybe start with neutral, right? Like feeling self-compassion, I actually find for a lot of us is hard to start with. So just neutral. Or can I be kind to myself? And what thought would I have to do that? And I think the other thought I have is you're pushing and pushing yourself because you don't trust that like you'll do it okay. But you have a lot of evidence that you're trustworthy, right? Your patients think you're trustworthy. You're a trustworthy mom. You finished medical school. I'm assuming you're an upstanding citizen. And so maybe you can trust yourself, but it's just unfamiliar. And so part of, from my perspective, part of weight loss is trusting yourself. It's like, am I hungry? Am I not? And mindfulness actually really helps you tap into how you feel. So if you do that hand to heart, I actually do it as many times a day now as I can because it feels amazing, and you can do it anywhere and nobody really knows what you're doing. You all of a sudden notice, like you can notice like you're just connected to yourself and you notice what's happening. And once you learn to notice, then you're like, I'm not really hungry. I'm not going to eat all that stuff. Or, oh, I ate that and I don't feel good. And next time I'm going to make a different choice. Like you start to notice how things make you feel because you pause to do it. And that's the first step. And so if there's no hurry to lose this weight, you have plenty of time. Because the journey of weight loss is really the journey of shifting your brain to be someone who takes good care of themselves and eats mindfully and moves through the world with intention rather than just eating mindlessly. And I say that with compassion because we were all trained to eat mindlessly as physicians, right? Eat as much as you can, as fast as you can, because who knows if you'll get to eat again. And many of us had a treat habit in residency to help us get through the night or whatever it was. And so our eating patterns are all wonky and they're not our fault. And then we're so busy. It's like one thing we can do to kind of be nice to ourselves. And so I think for you, it's probably more about compassion for yourself. And then one thought also is this idea, this question, what would love do? And so when I think about what would love do, we're all trained, and you can use what would compassion do, it's a twist of it, or what would peace do if you're in a difficult relationship or in communication encounter with someone. But you start with you. So in this scenario where you went on a trip and you didn't eat well and you're coming back, and the question would be, what would love do now? And so we start with what would love for you, Carmen, do to start?
I think be able to move on from what happened and not beat myself up about it. Mm-hmm. And kind of, just go back to what I was doing before and what I was feeling good about, and where I felt, empowered and more motivated.
Yeah. And so then you're not coming, if you're coming from a place of love, and most of us as physicians are loving humans who care about humanity and being healthy and contributing to the world, you can use that as like your guiding light or your guiding intention. So for some people, it would be, I want to show up with compassion for myself and everyone else in the world. Whatever resonates with you. But I find that a really good question because it gets out of like, am I being selfish? Am I not, being vigilant enough? Am I being lazy? It's just like, well, what would love do? Oh, love would, move on. And you're like, okay, I can move on then. And love might acknowledge that that's going to be uncomfortable because that's not your old habit. And it might be really disconcerting, and that's okay.
Something you said, I think, at the beginning,
yeah,
is something I'm going to try to remember, was that being unkind to myself releases cortisol, which is like not what I need, because I'm also like the kind of person that really wants, I'm a scientist too and run a lab, and I need that evidence, or like, I feel like I need evidence something's working to like feed into it, which I know is bad because I should be able to think that without it. But if I'm beating myself up, can be like, what, this is physiologically not good for me. And it can, I think, be an impetus to help me.
Yeah. Well, so in that book, she actually talks about, it's the amygdala, which is the part of your brain that's central to memory, decision-making, and emotional responses. When you feel shame, it triggers a cascade of norepinephrine and cortisol. And then the effects of those. She talks about them, but I think it will really help you say like, oh, I'm not, I'm in the wrong physiologic cycle here if I want to be losing weight. And compassion releases oxytocin, has the opposite effect. So hopefully that helps. Does anyone else want to get some coaching? If you do, feel free to unmute yourself. Let's see anyone else. Thank you, Carmen, for volunteering. Andre, perfect.
Well, not coaching. I just wanted to tell you what you said to Carmen really resonated with me. I've been coached for several years, but that was just something you said to her was just kind of hit the nail on the head, and just was amazing for me. You said, we don't know who we are if we're not being unkind to ourselves. Like, being unkind to ourselves is part of who we are. And that really resonated with me, because it's so easy for me to be kind to other people, even a stranger, even someone I don't know. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to being kind to myself and having kind thoughts, and Carmen, I just had those what I ate for dinner tonight, I just had your same thoughts. And I was thinking, I was feeling the same thing you were talking about, but the unkind thoughts. And it's so difficult to be kind to yourself because you don't know. And I think everybody on the call is, we're all decently successful and trustworthy women in life.
Yeah.
And we have to be hard on ourselves to get where we are, or at least we think we have to be hard on ourselves to push ourselves. And then for me, I go, I said I don't want coaching, but now I'm asking.
That's all right. That's all right. Yeah.
That for me, like, I'm a goal setter, and I'll go try to get it. I just don't take the time to do the little steps in between, which I'm trying to learn from Tracy. And I am so hard on myself if I don't reach my goal. So I'm an engineer, and it is it's pass or fail. If I build a bridge and it has one little thing wrong, done, that thing's a failure. And in my head, that's the way I work with myself. Like, if I don't get it perfect, I'm a failure. If my kids don't get it perfect, it's okay. We try again. So learning to talk to myself like I would talk to somebody else is truly life-changing. But you hit the nail on the head when you said, we don't know who we are if we're not unkind to ourselves. I'm paraphrasing. I can't remember exactly what you said. But that was amazing.
It's, I think it's a habit to be unkind. And it's actually a habit. You said we have to be hard on ourselves. And then you said, well, maybe we think we do. And so I just want to offer that we think we do. And actually, there's another quote that I really love that's from Mark Nepo. And he says, when we stop struggling, we float. And so we're all here in the water, like doing this, struggling with all this. And what if you let go of the struggle? You actually, in the water, you do float, right? Hopefully most of you swim, for that analogy. If you don't, it'd be a little more scary, but that when you stop the struggle, you have all that extra energy, and you actually often get to where you want to go much more quickly. And so we're sort of the ones who are struggling. And yet, because we're all high achieving, successful women, right? We still do well. But imagine if you could, I often say, like, stop struggling about the struggle. You don't need to struggle about the struggle. That's just extra energy. And so what if you let go, like gave up the energy you don't have, because I know none of you have any extra time or any extra energy, and you're expending all of that, beating yourself up and pushing yourself through this like drive. And instead, very often when we're kind to ourselves, we can get there much faster. And so I like to offer that beating ourselves up got us to where we are because we didn't really know another way. But it's possible. So it served you, and you can now let it go because it's not really sustainable going forward for the next 50 years of your life. I don't know everyone's age, but let's say 50 more years of your life or 40 more years of your life. It's not really sustainable. So it can, it can have served you well, but not continue to serve you well, if that makes sense. And you can change. The other thing, and there's actually a podcast on this in the Mindful Healers podcast, and we called it Unbecoming. And the idea is to stop being who you're not, so that who you are, you can start being who you are. And there's a phase in there, though, of like metamorphosis. If you think about like a caterpillar becoming a butterfly, where you actually have to dissolve and you turn like into muck. And you don't, first of all, that's the icky part. And that's the phase where you don't know who you are because you're not being mean to yourself. And then you have to form a new habit of being kind to yourself. And realizing that many of us were kind of lost without it. It's like an old friend, even though it's uncomfortable. And so realizing that something that's uncomfortable is still comfortable in its uncomfortableness, but you can, changing is also uncomfortable, but you get to a different spot. And so if there's discomfort in both pathways, which one would you choose? And then, oh, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, were you asking me that? I would certainly choose the one that's going to serve me. And oh my gosh, you're just hitting the nail on the head all the way through. It doesn't serve me anymore to be unkind to myself. I mean, maybe it got me where I was, but was it the right way to go about it? No, or where I am, but was it the right way to go about it? And you're 100% correct. We can do more and bigger and better things and have a bigger impact if we are kinder to ourselves.
We also stick to like, well, I have evidence that this works. That's how I got here. So I'm going to keep doing the thing that I know. But you've also done a lot of things that you don't have any evidence for. Like you didn't have any evidence you could be an engineer, but you ended up there. Right. And so realizing that you don't need evidence that it works to try it and see what happens. In case your brain is offering that like, no, I don't know that that works. I know that this works and I've been doing it. But you also know that this has consequences of its own. And then Laurel mentioned pouring ourselves into others. And that's one of the things that I see in relationships so often is we give, and we don't receive. Whether people are sending us stuff to receive, we can't even receive it. And so I call that concept the capacity to have. And most of us have very little capacity to have and kind of take in either compliments or gifts or love. And it's part of that push mentality and being mean to ourselves. And so other people are kind to us and we don't know what to do with it. We're just givers. And so trying to find more of a balance between giving and receiving, I think can be really helpful. And then in the meditation, I was actually talking about nourishing yourself first and how our hearts nourish themselves first. That's how they do this whole marathon of life. And so if you're mean to yourself, you're not nourishing yourself first. And if you're taking care of everyone else, your heart basically is not getting the care it needs. And so it's kind of like putting on your own oxygen mask first on an airplane, which I'm sure you all have heard of that analogy. But if you take care of yourself first, you have much more to give to all these other people. And so our brains tell us, like when you ask this question, what would love do in a relationship? It's always like, well, love for this person would do this and this. But if you end up resentful or overgiving, it's not actually love. And so that's why I find that question really helpful, because it calls you out on your people pleasing immediately, that we're, always giving and always trying to make everyone else happy. But if you don't make yourself happy, then you show up with resentment, which is not actually love, because then that kind of erodes the relationship as well, if that makes sense. Anyone else? I can share a few more. Oh, Renona.
Andrea said everything I was going to say. Tracy had hit on the other day that sometimes B- is okay. And I'm really struggling with that because B- is not okay. But
I'm going to offer a different approach, because B- was never okay with me either. And they teach you that in the school that she and I trained at. So I think A- is okay. Is A- okay with you?
Sometimes yes, and sometimes no.
Okay. Well, so for me, like B minus, I was like, it's actually not really okay. And in my mind. And so when I realized that, it's kind of like when you're trying to move towards something, so you're trying to get out of perfectionism. And A minus can actually be better because say you do an A minus on one thing, say you can do an A minus on 6 things. Instead of an A plus on 2 things, right? Because there is a limited amount of time and a limited amount of energy. And so what I like to offer is like, and I don't know if this will work for you. Can you be mostly good at everything you do? Not perfect, but mostly good.
If I quit doing some things.
Yeah. Well, so one other thought I have for you is this idea of, I don't know if Tracy's talked about manuals, but we have manuals for other people and how they should behave. Okay. But we have manuals for ourselves. And I'm guessing that your manual for yourself is off the chart, not realistic for a human being. And that you should do this and you need to do this and you have to do this, and that a good human female, in your situation would do all these things. And so I would offer to look at your manual with compassion, not beating yourself up, and say, like, is this a realistic manual for a human? And then decide how you want to show up. And if the B minus thing doesn't work for you, I would just let it go and come up with something else that works for you. Another one is I am doing the best I can with the information, skills, background that I have in the moment, time, energy, and that probably resonates. That's not a perfect job, because if you are you a mom?
I am.
Okay. And do you have a job, a profession?
I do.
Okay. What is it?
I'm executive director of a nonprofit.
Okay. So, and are you in a relationship?
I'm married.
Okay.
Forever, the same
Forever.
man.
Okay. Me too. Okay. So you are, and how many kids do you have?
I have 2 children and 3 grandchildren.
Okay. Perfect. So you are a grandmother of 3, a mother of 2, a wife, and an executive director. That's like in your circumstance line. And you can't, and there's 24 hours in a day.
Right.
Right. So put all of that in your circumstance line. And then decide, I coach from what I call the feeling line. So I go right to the feeling line, because most of us don't know what the day looks like and we don't know what the thoughts are, but we know how we want to feel in life. That's one of the reasons why I love this. What would love do? Like if you want to show up feeling love in your life, but I'm going to give you a different offering and you can pick a totally different one, but peace might be how you want to feel, or comfortable might be how you want to feel. Do you feel uncomfortable that you're never doing enough, or what's the...
I'm a procrastinator because
you're trying to do it perfectly.
Yes, it's
And you're trying to do it perfectly.
I fear I'm going to fail, and that's why I procrastinate.
Okay. So right now you fear failure.
Yes.
But when you're feeling fear, your action is to not do anything.
That's correct.
Yeah. And what's the thought that's making you feel afraid?
Failure.
But so it's, I can't fail, it's unacceptable, something bad will happen.
It's just subpar, B minus.
Okay, but why are you afraid of that? Because some people are fine with it. Your brain's telling you that means something. What will happen if you do B minus work?
I don't know. I'd have to think on that one. I don't know.
Okay, well, if you did know.
If I did know, I don't know. I don't know. I think I've just pushed myself so hard forever and ever, and that's just, I don't know.
I think your brain says something bad will happen if I fail, or if I mess up, or I don't do it perfectly. Does that resonate?
I would have to think.
Well, so close your eyes. I'm going to put you on this because you need to know what it is.
Okay.
This is why I like to coach from the feeling line. You're driven by this fear and you have no idea why you're afraid. So what are you afraid of? And even try your hand to heart, just because sometimes that's like helps you
Yeah.
connect with whatever the heck is going on in there. With compassion. Yeah.
Probably other people's expectations of me.
They'll be disappointed in you.
Yes, that's
Okay, perfect. So this is so interesting. I have a little whiteboard, but I can't find it. So your circumstance is you with 3 grandchildren, 2 children, and a husband. And your thought is other people will be disappointed in me if I fail, or I don't do it perfectly. Or what if I do B- work? Is that really the thought? That's why the B- is not working.
yes. I mean,
So that's your thought line.
yes.
And then your feeling line is fear of failure. And your action line, which I refer to as how you show up for the world, is procrastinating and feeling guilty and bad about procrastinating and feeling stressed because you're behind and anything
It
else.
just blows up. It's like the deadlines get closer and closer. Yeah.
Okay. And so your result line is that you're disappointing yourself,
Absolutely.
if not everyone else too. I don't know, but you're disappointing yourself for sure. I don't know. It depends.
Well, it just
I
makes
guess
it more stressful.
is that you actually get it done, but it's,
Yes, I do, but it's just like,
so
you
you're
know,
disappointing you. You see that?
yes, it just brings so much more stress as the deadlines just get closer and closer. And it's like,
So go back to how you want to feel. You have this job with deadlines and you have a husband and 2 children and 3 grandchildren. How do you want to feel in your life?
free.
Okay, I love that. All right. So how would you have to think about the situation to feel free?
Well, I've got to stick to my schedule.
Does that make you feel free though?
If I can do things in time, yes.
So I'm going to offer that that's a bit like Carmen's, it's a willpower thing. If I just stick to my schedule, it will work and I'll feel free. What if the thought was I can trust myself? I always get it done. Be right, or being kind to yourself somehow about it. Because the feeling of freedom is going to come from not having to push.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I don't think that thought actually makes you feel free. And I'm going to offer also that we might be taking the rung out of the ladder, like free might be too hard to get to start. That's where you really want to be. But maybe you could just feel, if we put the deadlines in the circumstance line, rather than feeling stressed or afraid, you could feel neutral about them to start. And then you can get to free.
Neutral about the deadlines?
Yeah. Is that possible?
Boy, sure. When I look at them and they're 2 months out, it's not a problem at all.
Okay, but my guess is you look at them and you think something to yourself like, oh, I'm going to just wait till the end and I'm going to, it's not going to work out. And then you feel guilty and then you don't do it because that's your old habit. So let's try the what would love do question again. I know it seems really odd around a deadline, but you have a bunch of deadlines coming up and you have all of that other stuff and time, 24 hours in a day. What would love do for you and for the deadlines needing to be done and a husband needing attention and children and grandchildren hoping to see their grandmother sometime, not stressed?
B-. Yes, we can just get it done. Just get it done. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect.
What if you just take the B- out of it, because maybe that stresses you out, which is just get it done. Do a mostly good job. Make it good enough.
Just get it done. Just get it done.
Because that resonates, because that's what flew out of your mouth. Just get it done. Love would get it done. That's what I would say. Because love would just get it done. Good enough, mostly good. We sometimes say, rather than B minus, done is better than perfect. Do you like that one? You have a hard time not.
I could learn to like that. I really think I could.
Yeah, I love done is better than perfect. The other thing that was transformative for me is the idea that perfect is actually by definition impossible.
It is.
Like that you were, and so I was like, wow, well, if perfect is not possible, it's like that's what it's defined to be, is not possible. So you're trying your whole life to achieve something that's not possible.
I know.
Yeah. And so of course you're driving yourself crazy.
Yes.
But with I say all this with compassion. What about that?
I can live with that.
Okay. So which ones are you going to practice?
Just get it done.
Just get it done. Okay.
Just get it done. Yeah.
The other thing I would offer to everyone else is that, we throw out all this stuff in coaching. We all have different brains. And so B minus works for someone, doesn't work for me. A minus solves the problem completely for me, but not for you, right? But for you, just get it done works. Like everybody's brain likes something different because we're wired differently. And Carmen likes the norepinephrine and cortisol, like that immediately changes. She's like, oh, okay, now I'm willing to do it. And so I think we so often think there's a right way, but there's not a right way. You just have to figure out, it's like, you have to figure out what your brain, what it's doing. That's the mindfulness noticing part. And then, what it likes, because if it's like, just get it done, then that's going to work for you, right? You'd be like, oh, just get it done. Doesn't have to be perfect. Perfect's not possible, or done is better than perfect. Just get it done. I think the word done is what's helpful. So some people done, it's not, done better than perfect. Someone likes the thought done earlier allows more time to be better. I don't know. See, for me, that would torture me because then I would keep making it better.
Well, that's it. Sometimes I'll stress over the words in a 3-sentence email, and it's like, is it, just.
That's where I think done is better than perfect.
Just send it. Yes.
Another tool that I find really, really helpful is asking your future self. So say you're stressing over that 3-line email. A week from now, will you care what you put in it? I mean, obviously not if you put a bunch of
right.
things, but can you trust yourself that what you would put in the first place is good?
There you go.
The other thing that I like to do there is tap into the feeling line again. So say you're writing a response to an angry email, is tap into how you want to feel when you send it. Like, okay, well, someone sent you an email that said they were disappointed in you, which is very triggering. And that came up in your thing. I like to think of disappointment as a 14-letter word. We all are triggered by disappointment. It's just 14 letters. It doesn't mean, it's just like lined up a bunch of vowels and consonants. But if you realize, so someone sent you an email that maybe said you had disappointed them or you didn't do something you're supposed to, and think about how you want to feel when you send the response email, because you probably don't want to feel reactionary, angry, upset, hurt. And so it's like, well, I want to feel calm, or I want to feel peaceful after I've sent it. And so you can tap into that. That will help you write whatever and be done with it. So I actually find that hand to heart, like, oh, how do I want to feel in responding to this? And then you're like, you just type it and you can trust yourself, but you have to begin to trust yourself.
That's good stuff.
Yeah. But if you can't trust yourself, this is another one. Who can you trust?
Who can I trust if I can't trust me? No one.
Yeah, so trust you.
That's exactly right.
Because imagine if you trust no one. Well, actually, right now you probably trust no one, and that's partly why life doesn't feel so good.
Oh,
right?
That's deep.
Yeah. All right. And love, since I'm supposed to talk about what love would do, so I'm making sure you all can own that I did do it. Love would trust yourself. Love for yourself would trust yourself, because it's harmful not to trust yourself. Like then you're always doubting yourself and second guessing yourself, and which doesn't mean it's easy. I want to be really clear about that. Trusting yourself is not at all easy. And just realize that, like, ooh, that's uncomfortable. But why not trust yourself?
Yeah, there's no reason not to. Absolutely not. I'll just let this crap go. Done. Easy.
Yeah.
We got this.
Just send it, don't stress, says Laurel. Yeah. But make sure you don't send it when you're mad. I actually think it's really important.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. I actually object to the idea of typing it and leaving it, because when I did that, I would be all angry when I typed it. And then I would, because I'd know I'd leave it, but then I'd have to rewrite it. And so I find the strategy of how do I want to feel about it? And maybe I write it when I can figure out what that is. But then I don't have to spend all the time like changing the words and rewriting it, making it nice when I go back, or not sending it and then never saying my piece, because it's easier not to say anything at that point. But you have to, again, do what works for your brain.
Thank you.
My pleasure. So we have 1 minute left. And my thought is just to breathe a minute, because realizing, I like to say in yoga that your breath is always available. And so when you're feeling like you're not sure what to do, or you're not sure what the answer is, or you're feeling stuck, I would do two things. One is ask that question, what would love do? But first I would pause and take 3 breaths, because that just grounds you and helps you just kind of connect with yourself and figure out what's going on. Or you can do hand to heart, or you can do all 3. That's even better, like 3 breaths, hand to heart. Close your eyes, and then your path forward will be much more clear. So that's what I refer to as like pausing and being present. And from there, you can decide how you want to go forward and choose those thoughts. And you can see better like what's happening and where you want to go. So take in a deep breath through your nose. You can keep your eyes open or closed. It doesn't matter. And this time out through your nose. And then in through your nose. And out through your mouth. And then in through your mouth. And out through your mouth. And just notice how you may feel a little more grounded and centered. You can open your eyes if they're closed. And I offer that also for Carmen in particular, when I used to eat chocolate in the afternoon when I was really stressed, and I learned that I could just breathe instead, and I felt equally good and it lasted longer. And so you might want to try that. Like when you're just like, oh, I just, want something to feel better, try breathing or try the hand to heart, because it releases the same kind of dopamine and relaxation. And that's why you're eating, to feel better. And so what else can you do to nourish yourself? For some people, the breath is not the thing. For some people, it's walking or whatever it might be, but pay attention to like what works for you and what feels good. So I think that we will end there. I will just put my contact info in the chat box for anyone who wants it. It's you can email me. It's Jessie at jessiemahoneymd.com. Keep it simple. And if any of you want to join me for yoga, even if you're not in healthcare, you're welcome to. I'm teaching on Zoom, so it matters not who comes, and it's fun. And I love teaching, so I love having more people. So you can get the links on my website is the easiest way to do it. So reach out, send me an email if you have any questions. And thank you guys all so much for joining. And thank you all for participating. That was so exciting and welcome and fun. And I always find that actually the learning is so much deeper when people share their experience and you get to do the coaching. So I encourage you, as uncomfortable as it feels, to just like dig into it and see what happens. It always feels really raw when you're on the spot and everyone's listening to you. But then afterwards, it's just, you get like so much more out of it. And so I encourage you to keep jumping in and trying and doing the work, because it really changes everything.
Could I ask you quickly?
Yeah.
You mentioned the points regarding relationships that if no one coaches, you're going to.
Yes.
Since we didn't have time for that,
Yeah.
do you have it on one of your podcasts or your website if we want to look them up?
Yes. If you go to, there's a page on my website that says Mindful Love, and like halfway down, there's a thing you can ask for them.
Okay.
It's the best way I can think of saying it. And then so they're on there, and then they're in those podcasts that I mentioned too, but not in that same format. So, and I can come back to, I can talk to Tracy if, I don't know how long you guys are doing this or where in the whole thing I came in. I can't remember. We talked about this a while ago, so you might be near the end as far as I know. But so you can find it on the Mindful Love page, and it will send them to you. And then they're in some of those podcasts as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Nice to meet you all. Have a beautiful evening. Stay safe. Be well. Bye.
Bye, you too.